and carry out son duty towards, or seeing seeing you be a son to your father?
I think in some capacity, because, he was around, probably, for the duration of the time that I had I mean, obviously, for the first 7 years of my life, I was living in Saudi Arabia, so he didn't really have a chance to interact with my children during that time. But once I came back to America and I was here permanently, they got to see me going to visit him. They got to see me interact with him and engage with him for the short amount of time that we had. So to some degree, yeah, they did see me do that. They saw me go out of my way to go visit him, to drive up from Delaware to New Jersey to go visit him. They saw me making those type of sacrifices. My children got a chance to spend the night with him. We would leave them at my father's house, and me and my wife would go to a hotel, and we would leave the kids, with him, to give him an opportunity to spend time with them. So to some degree, they did see me, but not in the full scope of what it means to be a son to a father.
Right. Well, I mean, in some regard, they get to see what was going to be important.
Right.
At some level.
Right.
Right. And so that was kind of the connection that I was making there. So last question. Then we're going to dive into the podcast. What do you believe, from your perspective, is the state of Black manhood today? And I'm going real specific today in dealing with the wives, or even dissolving of the relationship with the wife. So I'm going a little, because I know this is a lot of work that you do within marriage and things that nature there. So I'm going to go specific with you today in that. So
it seems like your question is kind of like twofold or threefold. What is the state of?
It's the state of manhood.
State of manhood.
State of manhood today, in pertaining to his marriage, and even the dissolving of a marriage, because all that goes hand in hand at times.
Right. So, Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillah. As it relates to the state of manhood, and we're talking about within the Muslim community, I presume.
Well, let me be a little bit more, maybe with that, but I am talking about Black manhood.
Okay.
I am dealing with that, but we are speaking to Muslim men. We're talking to a lot of men, period, in general, because I think I got a cross-pollination of people who watch.
Right.
But so if you can kind of look at it from maybe your paradigm, how you see it.
Okay, so I can't really speak to the larger Black community, other than looking at some of the statistics, and then, of course, what I see on social media, what I hear from people, and just kind of draw my own conclusion from that, which, may or may not be, necessarily accurate. But within the Muslim community, I can be a little bit more specific because I'm in it. I'm a part of it. I live it. I'm rubbing shoulders with brothers, doing counseling sessions. So I'm kind of in it. So I can be a little bit more precise when it comes to the state of Black manhood, with regard to how Muslim men are showing up for their families and how they are exiting these relationships, or these marriages. I don't think that we're living up to our fullest potential. And there are a number of reasons. I'm not just throwing that out as a blanket statement. If we're going to really unpack this conversation, we have to compartmentalize, why these things are taking place. But there are a lot of contributing factors to why men are not showing up for their families the way that they should. You have environmental influences. You have familial influences, you have religious influences, and all of those things have, opened up a door for a deeper conversation. But to shorten that and to make it more concise, I think that the whole idea of manhood has been convoluted. The whole idea of what it means to be a man has been convoluted. I mean, you have primarily 3 generations of men that are, functioning in the same space today. You have you have Gen X, which is our generation, right? Anybody that was born from 1962 to 1980, they're considered Gen X. That includes me. I was born in the 70s. Right. All right. And their rearing was by baby boomers. Like our parents or grandparents were baby boomers. Right? Most of us, especially those of us born in the 70s, most of us were not raised with our parents. We were raised by our grandparents. Most of our parents were sucked in, either through drugs or jail or coming home from Vietnam or coming home from the war and, addicted to drugs and addicted to, whatever was going on in those environments. So most of us were raised by our grandparents. And therefore, we have a lot of old school ways. I have a lot of old school ways. Me and my wife may differ on a lot of things because they're millennials, which is the next generation. Millennials, anybody born from 1980 to I think 1996, that they are considered millennials. 1997, that's a different generation. All right. And then you have Gen Z, which is from 1998, I think, all the way up until like 2000 and 2012 or something like that. So these are the 3 populations that you have existing in the same space today. And our understanding of manhood differs from one generation to the next. So what a millennial might consider masculine, a Gen X might consider very feminine. Painting your nails, wearing pocketbooks. That's more millennial Gen Z generation. For me, in my generation, that would have been considered, effeminate, for a man to do that. And so what I'm saying all of that to say is that all of that plays a part in the way that we are showing up for our families. Because for Gen X, what it means to be a man, we saw our grandfathers foot the bill for everything. Grandma didn't work. Grandma took care of the house. Grandma cooked. Grandma had the family over on Sunday. Grandma made, beat everybody in the house to make sure the house was clean. That's what grandma did. Grandma never went out to work. Unless, she was a profession. My grandmother, she was a nurse. So she worked because of her profession, not because she had to. Grandpa basically foot the bill for everything. So as a Gen Xer, as a Gen X, that's my paradigm. So
and that's standard of living.
Right.
Is different.
That's your standard. So when we talk about going 50-50, that's a foreign concept to me. Unless you just don't have the finances. And in that case, the woman doesn't make a big deal out of it because she knows who she's marrying. She's marrying a man. And she knows, even though you may not have it now, because you're ambitious, because you're enthusiastic, at some point you're going to get it. So she doesn't mind making the sacrifice. She's not gonna, she's not gonna make any bones about having to, come up off of some money to help pay for the bills. That just comes with the territory of being in a relationship. Now you fast forward to millennials and Gen Z. These guys, when they show up in their families, they're showing up in ways that someone sitting where I'm sitting would, we would consider that to be less than a man.
Right.
And even according to religious scriptures, even in Islam, you have something, called a dayuth. The Prophet ﷺ said, La yadkhulul jannah a dayuth. That the cuckold, as it's called in English, a cuckold will not enter into Jannah. And this is the type of man that allows his wife, the freedom and the liberty and, just the autonomy to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It doesn't mean that he takes away her freedom and her liberty to be, to operate in her full scope as a woman and her full nature as a feminine woman. That's not what it means. It means that the cuckold, the man that allows his wife to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uncorrected, unchecked, this man will not enter into paradise. And so the whole idea of men showing up, reversing the roles or compromising the roles of male and female. This is what you find with millennials and Gen Z. They don't operate with those roles that men are like this, women are like this. They have now come in and they have now convoluted the whole traditional role thing.
Blurred the lines.
They've blurred the lines, right? So, and in doing so, it's to their own detriment, because God put these rules, these laws in place because He is the most wise. He is the most knowledgeable. And He knows He gave us a system that works.
Right.
And so when we come along and we begin to compromise these roles, we begin to play around with these roles, manipulate these roles, based upon our understanding or our beliefs about what a man and what a woman is and what their roles are, then we begin to, go down this slippery slope that you see happening in today's time. All of this is as a result of changing the creation of Allah, as Allah mentions in the Quran, that Shaitan would command human beings to change the creation of Allah. Change the creation of Allah doesn't just mean changing the physical creation of Allah, but changing the natural order that God put in place.
Right. There's a mindset. There's a mindset that's being turned around.
Absolutely. It's being manipulated. Absolutely. And it's compromising the entire marital system from A to Z. Everything that marriage includes is now being compromised simply because we have changed the natural order. God's divine order. We've changed that. And that's pretty much it in a nutshell. So every problem that you see happening in marriages and divorces and raising children, all of it stems from changing the natural order. Because if we were to just follow that blueprint, the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded us to, we wouldn't see the problems that we see happening in today's time.
Okay, so then I'm gonna hit you with this and tell me what you're looking at. We see divorces